I am Mikhael Massa, and today I challenge the misconceptions surrounding Bantu identity and the true meaning of the broad and narrow paths. Many have been misled to believe that identity is fixed, that wisdom comes without questioning, and that spiritual growth can exist without critical thinking. But is this the truth? Let's uncover what has been hidden. In our tradition, the placenta and umbilical cord hold profound spiritual significance that goes far beyond their biological roles at birth. In many African cultures, these elements are regarded as sacred symbols that define one's identity, establish a deep connection to the earth, and provide spiritual protection. The umbilical cord, in particular, is seen as the vital link that connects the child, the mother, and the earth. This bond is both symbolic and practical, grounding the newborn within the community and ensuring that their existence is intertwined with the land. At birth, the ritual of burying the umbilical cord is performed with great reverence. It is a deliberate act that welcomes the child into the world, signifying their belonging to the land and inviting the earth to nurture and protect them. As the familiar saying goes, "I am from this land because my mother gave birth to me here, and my umbilical cord was buried in this soil," a phrase that embodies the literal and spiritual documentation of a child's origin. Equally important is the role of the placenta, which is seen as a record of the child's time in the womb, a sacred document of the first 9 months of life. Often, the placenta is also respectfully buried in a place of significance, such as near the family home or in a sacred area, as an expression of gratitude to the earth and the ancestors for a safe delivery and the gift of life. The placenta is believed to carry powerful energy and spiritual essence, used in rituals to promote prosperity, health, and overall well-being, thereby affirming that it is not discarded carelessly but treated as an integral part of the child's spiritual and physical identity. In African spirituality, the earth is viewed as a living, sentient being, safeguarded by ancestral spirits or guardians known as angel, among others. Burying the umbilical cord is also an act of introducing the child to these protective forces, creating an enduring network of spiritual support that weaves the individual into the larger tapestry of the community, the ancestors, and the natural world. However, in modern urban settings, these traditions have often been neglected, as many children are born in hospitals where the umbilical cord is discarded or burned, leading to a disconnection from the ancestral practices that once anchored individuals to their land and heritage. For those who value these ancient traditions, it remains possible, even in contemporary medical settings, to request that the umbilical cord and placenta be preserved and buried according to age-old customs, thereby ensuring that the child retains a profound spiritual connection to their roots. Ultimately, the placenta and umbilical cord are not mere remnants of birth, but enduring emblems of life, connection, and spiritual protection. They serve as a constant reminder of our deep ties to the earth, the ancestors, and the community, reinforcing the belief that every new life is inherently linked to a greater, interconnected spiritual ecosystem. Honoring these practices not only preserves our cultural heritage, but also provides a vital source of strength and identity in an increasingly disconnected world. In our tradition and cultural understanding, there are many misconceptions about what it means to be Bantu. These misconceptions often stem from a lack of knowledge or a narrow view of Bantu history and culture. Let's address some of these ideas and clarify what it truly means to embrace Bantu identity. One common belief is that to be Bantu, you must eat with your hands, wear animal skins, or live in traditional mud houses. This is a limited and often incorrect view of Bantu culture. The Bantu people are from a vast and diverse region with a rich history of civilizations, each with its own unique practices, traditions, and innovations. To reduce Bantu identity to a few stereotypes is to ignore the complexity and depth of Bantu heritage. The idea that eating with your hands is the only Bantu way to eat is a misconception. While many Bantu cultures do eat with their hands, this is not universal. Historically, various Bantu groups used utensils, including forks, spoons, and knives. The use of utensils does not make someone less Bantu. What defines Bantu identity is not how one eats, but the values, traditions, and history that one carries. Another misconception is that wearing industrial or Western-style clothing makes someone less Bantu. This is not true. Bantu cultures have a long history of textile production and innovation. Many Bantu societies produce their own fabrics, such as kente cloth from West Africa or mud cloth from Mali. Today, Bantu fashion is a blend of traditional and modern styles, and wearing Western clothing does not erase one's Bantu identity. In fact, many Bantu designers are now global leaders in the fashion industry, blending traditional African patterns with contemporary styles. The idea that wearing animal skins or traditional garments is the only way to express Bantu identity is also outdated. Just as other cultures have evolved in their clothing styles, so have the Bantu. Wearing a suit or modern clothing does not make someone less Bantu. What matters is the pride and connection one feels to their heritage. The belief that living in a modern house made of bricks or concrete makes someone less Bantu is another misconception. Traditional mud houses and thatched roofs are part of Bantu architectural heritage, but they are not the only form of housing among the Bantu. Many Bantu civilizations, such as the Great Zimbabwe or the ancient cities of Timbuktu, had advanced architectural techniques and built structures that were both functional and beautiful. Today, Bantu people live in a variety of housing styles, from traditional homes to modern apartments. Living in a modern house does not diminish one's Bantu identity. These limiting beliefs about what it means to be Bantu can have a negative impact on young Bantus, especially in Angola and other parts of the continent. When we reduce Bantu identity to a set of stereotypes, we limit the potential of young people to embrace their heritage, while also engaging with the modern world. Bantu identity is not static, it is dynamic and evolving. It is possible to be both deeply rooted in tradition and fully engaged with modernity. To move beyond these misconceptions, it is important to educate ourselves about the diversity and richness of Bantu history and culture. The Bantu are not a monolith. They come from different regions, languages, and traditions. By learning about the different civilizations, innovations, and cultural practices across Bantu societies, we can develop a more nuanced understanding of what it means to be Bantu. Critical thinking is also essential. Instead of accepting stereotypes, we should question where these ideas come from and why they persist. The notion that Bantu people only eat with their hands or wear animal skins is often rooted in colonial narratives that sought to portray the Bantu as primitive. By challenging these narratives, we can reclaim our identity and define what it means to be Bantu on our own terms. Being Bantu is not about adhering to a set of outdated stereotypes. It is about embracing the rich and diverse heritage of the Bantu people while also engaging with the modern world. Bantu identity is not defined by how we eat, what we wear, or where we live. It is defined by our connection to our history, our values, and our communities. Let us move beyond limiting beliefs and celebrate the complexity and diversity of Bantu culture. By doing so, we can empower young Bantus to take pride in their heritage while also embracing the opportunities of the modern world. The Bantu are not a single story. They are a tapestry of many stories, and each of us has a role to play in shaping their future. Beautiful. And today, Bantu peoples live in a variety of housing styles, from traditional homes to modern apartments. Such limiting beliefs can negatively impact young Bantu, particularly in regions like Angola and beyond, by confining our identity to a few stereotypes and restricting the potential to embrace our heritage while engaging with the modern world. Bantu identity is dynamic and evolving, allowing us to be deeply rooted in tradition and fully engaged with modernity. To move beyond these misconceptions, it is essential to educate ourselves about the diversity and richness of Bantu history and culture, recognizing that Bantu is not a monolith but a tapestry of over 50 countries, thousands of languages, and countless traditions. Through critical thinking, we can question where these stereotypes originate, often from colonial narratives that depicted us as primitive, and instead reclaim our identity by defining what it truly means to be Bantu on our own terms. In our tradition and understanding, there is a common metaphor often discussed in religious and philosophical contexts, the broad path and the narrow path. Many believe that the broad path is the one followed by worldly, secular people, while the narrow path is reserved for the religious, those who live according to the teachings of their faith or divine principles. However, this interpretation may not fully capture the essence of these paths. Let's explore this concept more deeply. The idea of the broad path and the narrow path is often misunderstood. Many assume that the broad path represents a life of ease, indulgence, and secularism, while the narrow path symbolizes a life of discipline, faith, and religious devotion. But this interpretation oversimplifies the true meaning of these paths. The broad path, not just for the secular, contrary to popular belief, the broad path is not exclusively for those who are non-religious or worldly. In fact, the broad path is often the one most traveled by the majority, including many who identify as religious. Why? Because the broad path is the path of belief without questioning, the path of comfort and conformity. It is the path where people accept what they are told without seeking deeper understanding or evidence. This path is easy to follow because it requires little effort, no critical thinking, no challenging of norms, and no stepping outside one's comfort zone. The broad path is not inherently secular. It is simply the path of least resistance. Many religious individuals follow this path by adhering to dogma without questioning or seeking to understand the deeper truths of their faith. They believe because it is easier to believe than to seek knowledge. The narrow path, the pursuit of knowledge. On the other hand, the narrow path is often misunderstood as being exclusively for the religious. In reality, the narrow path is the path of knowledge, critical thinking, and personal growth. It is the path where individuals seek to understand the world, question assumptions, and challenge their beliefs. This path is narrow because fewer people choose to walk it. It requires effort, courage, and a willingness to face discomfort. The narrow path is not about blind faith. It is about seeking truth, even when that truth contradicts popular beliefs or societal norms. Those who walk this path are often misunderstood, criticized, or even ostracized by others, especially if their pursuit of knowledge challenges established traditions or beliefs. The role of belief versus knowledge. To fully grasp the difference between the broad and narrow paths, it's important to understand the distinction between belief and knowledge. Belief is based on acceptance without evidence. It is often rooted in tradition, culture, or authority. Belief does not require proof or understanding. It simply requires faith. Knowledge, on the other hand, is based on evidence, experience, and understanding. It requires questioning, research, and critical thinking. Knowledge is not easily acquired. It demands effort and a willingness to challenge one's own assumptions. The broad path is dominated by belief, while the narrow path is dominated by knowledge. This is why the narrow path is more challenging. It requires individuals to step away from the comfort of belief and venture into the unknown in search of truth. The societal pressure to conform. Walking the narrow path is not easy. Those who choose this path often face societal pressure, criticism, and even isolation. Family, friends, and community members may discourage them from questioning established norms or seeking knowledge that contradicts popular beliefs. This is especially true in religious communities, where questioning dogma can be seen as a betrayal of faith. However, the narrow path, though difficult, is ultimately more rewarding. It leads to a deeper understanding of the world, a stronger sense of self, and a more meaningful life. Those who walk this path are not bound by the limitations of belief. They are free to explore, learn, and grow. Conclusion. The broad path and the narrow path are not simply about secularism versus religion. They are about conformity versus critical thinking, belief versus knowledge, and comfort versus growth. The broad path is easy to follow but leads to a life of unexamined beliefs and limited understanding. The narrow path is challenging but leads to a life of deeper meaning, truth, and personal fulfillment. In the end, the choice between these paths is a personal one. But for those who seek to truly understand the world and their place in it, the narrow path, the path of knowledge, is the one worth taking. It may be difficult, but it is the path that leads to true freedom and enlightenment.